Hello, guys, and welcome back again. We have
Hello.
Ahmed here. Hi.
Hello again. Hi.
Hi. So, yeah,
Been
welcome. Yeah.
yeah. It's good to see you again. It's been about 2 years since our last conversation about
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah, it went so fast. I thought it's
Mm.
just 1 year or 1 year and a half.
Right.
And
I
so, yeah.
remember like that first podcast was just on the brink of me leaving and going on this new journey of mine, and uh now we're kind of at the not end of it but an update for it. So yeah.
Yeah, yes, I'm looking forward to hear all of this, what happened meanwhile as well. I'm sure everyone who is
Mm.
listening as well. And I also want to address before we started, I took a break as well for a few months. I wasn't doing
It's
any, interviews. So hello guys, welcome back here. So we will continue with this. And I also wanted to say that I started a Patreon. So probably, guys, you saw that maybe on Instagram, but just wanted to mention if Art Side of Life help you in any way, it would be super nice if you guys join. And yeah,
I do want to say like I very much as an artist part of the community I appreciate all the stuff you're doing because you've done so many interviews and brought like people to the forefront, and you're excited about art, and that's always fun, and you're an artist as well, so hats off to you. Well, I keep my head on, but yeah. I appreciate it, and a lot of people do, so thank you.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, because I would love to continue, but also the another reason I had to take a break was because I was working on a lot of other client projects, plus a little
Mm,
bit of traveling. So just to keep this going as well, like kind of need a little bit of help.
right
But
on.
you also have a Patreon where you help
Mm.
artists, right, with the tutorials and like kind of taking it as a art school, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, last time we spoke, it was right before I launched Patreon as my plan of attack, and I had built like a YouTube following big enough to put it in front of people to say, hey, I'm doing this now, and yeah, the idea was that I wanted to provide some kind of structure where people can learn, and basically, I've already taught at Art Center, Brainstorm, various other places like online, um, as well as workshops. So I basically wanted to bring that to be a little bit more accessible. Of course, it's not going to be the same thing, but I
Yeah.
wanted to bring the tutorials and lectures and lessons, but also provide some kind of assignment that people can do on their own, which was pretty cool to see people doing. Then we also have a Discord server,
Yeah.
so that became its own community, and it's still thriving today, 2 years later. So yeah.
Ah, that's super cool. Yeah, so basically you started all of this like when we last spoke. So
Yeah.
how did you went about like planning and where were you there then and where are you kind
Mm.
of now? Kind of which were the steps you took and
I,
changes?
I guess a snapshot image of where I was me looking into this uncertain fog of I have no idea what's going to happen or what I'm doing. I have no answers or a clear path. But and that's the nature of an artist. It's like looking at something you don't know and taking a stab at it, and not, I mean, metaphorically speaking, and like kind of exploring and finding answers, and answers reveal themselves to you all, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi like. So yeah, it was very much uncertain and very nervous and anxious. So that was a huge part of it because since you don't know and you don't have answers, you're kind of in this state of, oh, how am I going to make money? Where am I going to go? Who's going to support this? How long will it last? What do I need to provide? How consistent does it have to be? Like all these things start to come up, and that adds to the anxiety. But now having started that, traveled a bit, and having been running this for since we last talked, I have learned a lot, and I'm in a different place now, far more, I guess, certain, but still uncertain about a lot of things. Definitely more confident, and I'm continuing creating content, not so much for YouTube because I've sort of redirected my efforts lately to just Patreon stuff and keeping up with the community, which is part of the package.
Yeah.
Not that I'm catering to every single person, but when people are online, sometimes we do critiques, sometimes we
Yeah.
do group studies and challenges, which
Yeah,
is fun.
like group coaching.
Yeah, that does happen a lot, and I've learned a lot from it for myself, which is really a good takeaway for anyone listening. Is like the the best way to learn, if you're curious about learning, is to teach. And so even if you just have to find someone who doesn't know the thing that you know and convey it to them, and then you'll kind of reinforce it in your mind and figure out different ways to look at it. So that's
because
been
it
great.
also helps you to kind of structure the things. Also, when I started
Hmm.
to teach, it was like, okay, how can I present this topic? Like, what are the big chunks, and how you can break it down, and what are the
Right.
assignments you would give to
Exactly.
students. So, yeah, definitely, it makes you help think about it. Like, what is actually the important part, and what people ask you, right? What are the questions, and what can you like
Yeah.
develop more?
Right. Right. And since I did start the Patreon when we last spoke, I realized I didn't really need to stay in Los Angeles, and so I decided to get rid of everything and leave and just kind of see the world for the most part. So I drove across the USA for a couple months, just going to different places and seeing things and taking my time to think. And I remember maybe like it was 1 week into the trip, and I was just writing in my sketchbook and trying to understand my thoughts and motivations. And I drew like just a very crude, you know, drawing of like me standing in front of this road, like kind of leaning back against my car, and a big question mark. Like I just don't know. By the way, is my camera blinking or is that just me?
I think it's fine. It seems fine on this end.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah. And so that was really cool. I saw amazing things that I didn't even know were here in the States. And then it's funny, right when I got to my destination, which is Ohio, because that was where my parents lived. I had gotten this opportunity to go back to LA, and I couldn't escape. And so like I was flown back out for this competition for this digital art battle. And because I had qualified there, they sent me to Japan, and that spurred a whole nother like realm of traveling for a couple months. And so I spent a lot of time in Asia, in Japan, in different places of Japan, but also Singapore and Thailand. So that was fun.
So it was kind of combination of like business travel plus your own travel.
Yeah, I definitely wrote it off as a business expense here and there.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause-
like if someone invites you somewhere, you have also
yeah.
like workshops, so it's I
Hmm.
mean, helping you to travel because they show you around a bit, like tell you, oh, this
Yeah.
is here and there, and then you can explore by yourself. So that's why I think business travel definitely helps at the beginning, at least.
It definitely started as business, but then it was just being somewhere else kind of puts you in this state of like starting to rearrange what you think the world is, and that's such a cool thing. Traveling really adds to your perspective of the world and your art and your expressions, and so it was definitely an awesome experience.
Yeah, and you also did like some meetups, right? I saw it on
Hmm.
your Instagram, and
Yeah.
yeah, so you did like different groups of people, or how did you organize all of this?
Right. Usually it happens to be short notice where I'll be in a place, whether it's somewhere in the States or Asia or Thailand or Singapore, and maybe 4 or 5 days ahead of time, because I never know where I'm going to be. So I'll, kind of post on Instagram, sometimes on Twitter. I don't use Twitter very much because I don't understand it. I don't know why people still use it. Anyway,
It's not my favorite either.
yeah, it's like I can't go on there and not walk away feeling upset about something. It's like, why do I do this? Anyway, so yeah, I'll post about it and see if anyone's interested to meet up, and also recommendations of where to meet up because I'm not familiar. And if there's a big group, it's like I can't just bring them all to Starbucks. And so they'll often recommend a park or some kind of place like a mall, food court. And we all get together, and what I usually do is go to each person and kind of talk and ask what their story is, what their dreams are, and kind of get a gauge of where everyone is, and then just have conversations, open it up to questions and sketch session. And so we'll sketch in each other's sketchbooks. It's a fun time.
Ah, that's super cool. Yeah, because actually one of the listeners, I want to do a shout out to Manuel, who mentioned that he met with you in Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that
Manuel,
was
yes.
super cool. And he was very excited about it. So I wanted to say hi. And so
Yeah.
for other
Funny
people,
story.
yes.
Because I was in, I think, where was it? It was close to Shibuya, but not Shibuya, Harajuku. But there's a temple there, and I was just kind of there by myself. I had my red hat, so I'm recognizable, and I'm just, kind of winding down, and I go towards the food court area, and I could sort of feel that there's like this person kind of just like looking at me from afar, and I'm like, okay, all right. And then like I go get my food, and then the guy comes up to me. He's like, are you Ahmed? I'm like, yeah. What's your name? I'm like, Aldoori. Oh, I'm a huge fan. Nice to meet you. And so like I'm like, oh, that's so random. And that happened twice actually in Japan.
Yeah, because he didn't come to your meetup. It was just like random, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
completely
That's
random.
so
He didn't.
funny.
I think he saw in my Instagram that I was somewhere in Japan, but not there. And so I'm like, oh, why don't we have lunch together? And he was there with his girlfriend, and uh, I took a look at his artwork and gave him some demos of what he needs to work on and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's super cool. Yeah, I mean, it's like you are helping so many people, and then if you guys get to meet as well, I mean, it's super fun to meet actually the person in person. So,
Apparently, I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. No, because it feels more real, right? So it's you're like, oh, you're actually the same person as you are like
Yeah.
on the screen.
I try
So
to, yeah, yeah. Well, never
you
mind.
try to do that, yes.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
Try not to put on a
Yeah.
mask.
So, and how then it helped you to, the travel and thinking about what you want to do next? How were you planning, like how are you going to make income or, what type of art are you going to, still
Yeah.
do? Like, is it for movies? Is it for yourself? Is it like really targeted on what people are asking you? Like this type of planning.
Well, it was definitely a big question for myself as in terms of what do I want to do. Uh, and I didn't have an answer, but I knew what I didn't want to do. And I didn't want to work for anything anymore in terms of big companies or not that it's a bad thing. I've done that and I want to go do my own thing now. I certainly have that as a backup if I do need to return, but I mean, I'm taking a few small gigs here for like Bungie and some video game stuff. I actually had to recently turn down Marvel Studios, but anyway, the thing is like there's this burning passion that I think a lot of us have, and I equate it to like the sort of feeling you have when you have a really deep dream, and it's just so real to you, and like. For me, when it comes to art, is like I want to figure out what that is and say that on paper or a book and or a movie or something. And so I think the way I planned that and in terms of how do I do it, how do I monetize it, how do I become successful with it? Well, I think when it comes to monetizing what I want to do, is I had to decide to get this apartment. It's a pretty decent place. It's close to my family. It's much cheaper than Los Angeles, which is great. And I want to sit down and figure that out. And so I've been here for a few months in writing, sketching, coming up with ideas. And the result is I'll be doing this art book, which is a compilation of different themes, genres, sketches, paintings, and launching that as a Kickstarter. And luckily, I do have a platform that I can announce it on, and hopefully that'll kind of make it successful. But yeah, it was a lot of reflection, and I had to get there by accepting a few things, and that was the fact that figuring things out takes a long time, and that at the beginning, for all of us, we're always very impatient, especially me at the beginning of my trip. It was like I wanted answers, I wanted it now, I needed to know what am I going to do. But then I had to just embrace the fact that it takes time. I had to travel a lot, make bad decisions, make good decisions, steer this way and that way. A lot of things started to fall into place because I decided that, it's okay to not know and it's okay to get help. And I started going into self-help, but that only got me so far. So I eventually sought out a therapist. I started going to that, and that was so helpful because for once it was like it's somebody's job to like try and figure you out and help you. And I've been on my own in that regard for so long that finally just putting that on someone else was a relief. And like the cool thing about that is someone else can point out things that you don't see because it's in your blind spot. And so a different perspective of a therapist, in my case, who wasn't an artist, it was really interesting to hear what he had to say. And so I went back a handful of times, and it was such a good impact couple that with medication. And so I had a lot of anxiety in the past, especially when it comes to doing art for Patreon or YouTube or Instagram. There was this very, like, imagine all these restraints and things that I think I was supposed to do. And like that builds up and that causes anxiety and pressure. But the medication helped not really get rid of it, but turn it way down. And so I could feel it there, but it was more like, okay, whatever. I would kind of just carry on and do art. But I also want to get to a place where I don't rely on the medication. And I find that by writing in those moments and tackling those issues as it happens, sort of gets rid of them. And I'm in a place now where I realize that we all have that inner critic. We're all very hard on ourselves, I think, especially as creatives, whether it's music or painting or drawing. And for me, it's like the inner critic was so, I guess, loud and hurtful, right? In such a way that I end up like just literally sweating and just I end up not doing art anyway, right? As a result. Then I started writing about it and saying, where did this come from? Who was so rude and mean to me in my childhood? This, because usually all our problems today is because of our childhood. And then I was trying to like find the source of how it happened and address that so that it goes away. Then I realized an epiphany in that the whole time it was just, it's weird to say it was just me, right? It's like, okay, the answer was in front of you the whole time.
Yeah.
But I remember
that's usually the thing, that we are the harshest, the critics of ourselves, but it sounds cheesy, but it's usually the case.
It's like, it was sort of like an algebraic equation where there were X and Y variables, and I was just trying to figure out what those variables were. And in this case, I remember growing up, I was very negative, not just to myself, but whenever I see other people's art, I would internally say, that's horrible. They'll never make it. They're not good. This is bad. Oh, the design's not good enough. This and that. And so it was like I had, like, it's like I was broadcasting this negative energy. And as an adult, it's like there was just a big mirror and it just came right back at me. And it's like those things that I would say about other people, it's as if I was saying it to myself in such a way that it just locked me up, and I was in an analysis paralysis and I did nothing. And so that was a nice epiphany. I was like, oh, now when I draw and feel that anxiety, I was like, it was just me the whole time, and I could let myself off the hook. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you do it now? Do you still like write in the morning, or like kind of what are you maybe grateful for, or what are your goals, or, this kind of the miracle morning thing, when you just spend like at least 5-10 minutes a day in the morning for yourself, and then you start, creating, or basically your normal work day?
Yeah, I can't say I have a specific routine. There's something about schedules and structures that I don't like about. And so like, it's more, I just go with the flow. I know there's definitely a benefit to routine, and I do want to develop, especially for health and fitness, like, yoga in the morning or something physical to breathe and actually move your body and stretch and lift or run or something. I hate running. But yeah, I think I just do it as it happens, and knowing like I can choose to address it. And for the longest time, when those things would happen, I would just, in a sense, run away or play games or distract myself. But now that I understand that all it takes is just looking at the problem through writing as it happens is the way to go.
Yeah, because I also found that with the writing, like if I'm worried about something, like I'm usually stressing out, like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult, or something, like it will not work out. Yeah. And then when I start writing, like what can be the worst thing which will happen, and then you just write down everything, and you're like, okay, I can avoid that actually, I can do something for it, so it will not happen. And then you're like, okay, it's manageable probably.
Right. And it's like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Death, rejection from the world, and they spit you out into space and you're all alone. Like, is that really going to happen? I don't think so.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. At least not yet.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I mean, the probability is not so high, right? If you are like applying for a project you really want, and if it doesn't work out, I mean, just doesn't crumble everything else, you just do something else.
Yeah, and if it does crumble, then you can look at the crumbs and figure out, okay, well, what went wrong? Let's reverse engineer and try to make it not happen again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
But some people, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry.
Oh, some people just don't want to experience that initial failure, so they just don't even engage. But that's the kind of bravery I think it requires for creatives to be willing to fail and to feel that hurt, because you could also use that hurt for your art. And
Oh yeah. Yeah, because that's like also for people listening now, that's not that we want to fail, obviously, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's or you are just like not upset about the failure, you know? Of
Yeah.
course, when you fail, you're very upset, but it's just like afterwards how you react to it, then you learn. So that's, I think, very good approach.
In a way, you could become excited about looking forward to fail.
Yeah, like
an
fail, fall forward.
Yeah, fail forward. And so like if I have students, I'll say, look, you have this project that you're about to do. It's a big project. And in order to do it, it's really daunting. There's a lot of factors and variables and different designs and research. And your first drawing is not going to be the best one. So give yourself a stack of paper or a bunch of layers in Photoshop and say, this is the bad pile. Let me get this out of the way now, and then draw and do the things, write out the things, and so that you can have something to look at and be like, okay, I knew this was going to happen. Let's keep going and see what we can explore. But usually what happens is in that pile, they start to see the gold that they want it to be. It's like, oh, this is good. All right, we'll keep this one. I like this one. These, not so much, but embracing that process as opposed to, no, my first drawing has to be it has to be the best, it has to be ready for Instagram and Twitter, blah blah blah, blah. And like that just creates pressure and
It's like out there,
yeah.
So what do you do now, like daily, or as you said, you don't have really like routines, but how does your maybe week look like? What do you focus on, or these kind of things, like you draw all the time, or you just go with people to talk about the future, or
A lot of coffee. I think well, a snapshot of what my week looks like. I'm sure any of my people on Discord watching this are just laughing because they know I waste a lot of time on there. But not wasting, because it's still good to keep up the community. But I do spend a lot of time socializing on there. But I tend to be more introverted, so I like a lot of time alone, and then a bit of socializing to like remind myself that I'm like, oh God, like I need people. But I like to work alone. But I guess I'm mostly here. Putting together projects, drawing. Lately, I've been. I took on a student. I rarely do this, but I do have a student because I saw an opportunity where they had a lot of potential. I'm like, well, I can see what you need, and I feel like if I was to coach you for a little bit, you'll be in the right direction, and I want to see you succeed. That kind of thing. So that's really rewarding because, like we said, I learned from that a lot. Yeah. And that also gives me a structure where, well, I can't just be like, okay, go do this, and then like let them run off. It's like, okay, do this by this time, and let's figure out, and we'll do a critique session. And it's been pretty good.
And this is on weekly basis, or like how did you agree on the mentoring kind of thing? Or how to call it complete, call?
This is totally unusual, and I don't do this, but because it was a friend on Discord, and he's not too far away from where I live, only a few states away. I was like, look, if you want to come spend a couple weeks here, I can really help you. And so every day has been like a boot camp, and it's much like I wish I had this when I was learning. And so I'm like, all right, you're gonna come here, I'm gonna teach you this stuff. You better get good, we're going to do this, sleep early, and we're going to work out, although he's the one working out. I'm just lazy.
But working out is good for your brain, so for oxygen.
I got to pull up bar. I got some weights, and he's showing me his like workout routines. But like it's been really good because, like I said, it gives a bit more structure to me as someone who hates structure. And I know I need it, but I hate it. But it's good. Yeah.
Have you tried the 16personalities.com? Like, which type of personality are you?
INF, INFP.
Yeah, so but
Yeah.
but this
Yeah.
one is more the as well like what are good for you, like the future, or what can you do as an entrepreneur, or socializing. So they have like interesting tips. So for people who haven't tried it, it's actually fun to do.
Yeah, INFP, we tend to be dreamers, I guess, as it's. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Do you know what you are? Which one are
Yeah,
you?
I am the extroverted
Oh,
whatever
clearly
thing.
doing interviews and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because then it's like I also worked a lot alone, and then I was so tired, and I couldn't figure out like what it is, and I found out like I actually need to be around people, so I kind of like recharge batteries when I talk with others.
Oh yeah.
When you are introverted, right, you need to read a book and be by
Right.
yourself to recharge. So it's very
Like
funny.
when I'm around extroverted people, I get drained very fast,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
fast, and so I have to go recharge the opposite way from you.
Exactly. But I mean,
Yeah.
everyone should know what is their thing, right? So
Yeah.
you know how to recharge because so you can continue.
Right.
But
Like I
yeah,
like 4 days of solitude, maybe one day of people. 4 days of solid, one day of people.
yeah, exactly. So that's a good. And do you have like some book you are reading now, as you mentioned, like also
Mm.
like spending time with yourself, or or is more the games or TV?
Uh, so I'm I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks in the past few months. I use Audible. I'm not sponsored by it. I'm just saying. Uh,
Yeah, I use
yeah,
Audible as well.
yeah,
Like two books a month at least.
a lot of sci-fi, a lot of fantasy, a lot of hard sci-fi, which I'm really getting into lately, and it's been great. I do want to go back into more business books, not business, but like self-help and understanding psychology. Yeah, maybe just psychology,
Yes. Yeah.
because I do want to incorporate more of that into my future. Because I imagine for my future, where I want it to go is sure, I want to make art and cool things and, do the whole Miyazaki thing and make stories. But at the same time, I imagine myself having some kind of system where I become sort of not a therapist, but a psychologist ish for artists, like kind of paving the path, maybe not specific people one on one, but rather turning my YouTube channel into that. Because I haven't touched my YouTube channel in a while, and so every once in a while I'll put something up, but I'm still asking the question, what do I want to do on YouTube? And I think a lot of it is not like, hey, here's how to draw a nose. Like rather, all right, here's how I got through this. Here's how you could get through this based on your personality and what you need to figure out. Because most of the art stuff online is the tutorial stuff, which is great. But there's a different, I guess, niche. Not really for money. I'm not really motivated by money anymore. It's more like, what's actually meaningful and fulfilling. And there's other really good people like Adam Duff on Lucid Pixel. I love
Yeah.
listening to his podcasts. They're really helpful while I'm drawing. And so I realized when I was drawing and listening to that, I'm like, well, that's really helpful. Maybe I could also go back to being that for people.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I think that people would definitely appreciate it because that's, as you said, like a good niche because it's like when you reflect on yourself, how can I help others, right? Because you have some experience in that area, you want to share what was, your journey, and you also do art, so it's kind of like a perfect mix.
Yeah. In the end, I'm more, it's for selfish reasons. I say I want to help people, but it just makes me feel good. So it's really for me in the end.
Yeah, but that's for everyone. I mean, like they did some studies also in the psychology books. Like if you buy a coffee for yourself, you're like, yeah, fine. But if you buy a coffee for someone and they're super happy about it, you just feel just so much better.
Right. It's win-win.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
might say, well, if you're gaining from it, then it doesn't count. Why? Who are you? Like, go home.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you read the book? What is it called? Predictable Irrational?
No, I shall write that down.
That one is also like a psychology, not really influence, but how do we react to things and why and what is like kind of hard coded. So that's one of the books I was audible reading recently.
Very interesting. Cool.
So that one you might like. And yeah. So is there some other ones you are now looking into? What do you want? You just research from psychology or not yet?
No, not really. I do want to dive into like the older classic
Hmm.
psychology, things like Carl Jung and Freud and all that stuff. But I'm right now just distracted by sci-fi. And I got to recommend this trilogy that was mind blowing. Like normally when I do listen to science fiction or whatever, it's like the guns and spaceships and like warp speed drive and shoot the aliens, and that's fun, especially for imagery, for paintings and drawings. But then I got into this book called The Three Body Problem,
Hmm.
and I think the trilogy is called Remembrance of Earth's Past, and it's a Chinese author, like Cixin. I don't know how to say it, but it's like Cixin.
Hmm.
Um, and that took my mind places, I'll tell you. Like, oh my God, the concepts of in science being applied in a fictional way, obviously science fiction, uh, really gets you thinking. So, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, because
tangent.
a lot of these things might be already like happening and we just don't know it
Mm.
because it's somewhere hidden. And then when they put it in some story, then you're like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's totally true. And then when you're reading these books, does it reflect on your art more, or how do you, like how does it come out, into the
Yeah,
artworks?
I usually listen to these books when I go to bed,
Hmm.
uh, and so it sometimes influences my dreams. But I don't see it coming out into my art too much. I think when it comes to art and creation for like my art book and stuff, there's different ways to go about it. Like there's the artist route, which is like, yeah, I feel this and it looks like that, right? But then there's the designer route, which is, well, I can imagine this world and I know what the colors could look like. Let's get some research and let me draw. Oh, there was a sci-fi thing that did this. Maybe I could put a spin on it. And so sometimes it goes either way. Right now, what I'm thinking for my art book in terms of how that actually affects my art. Um, have you seen Love, Death, and Robots by any chance?
Nope.
Okay, it's
I will put it on the list.
yeah, it's like adult level animated, really cool stuff. I really liked it because it's on Netflix and it's
Hmm.
a series and it's more of an anthology
Hmm.
and each episode is a different story, different artist, different director, I think. And the styles are different from each one, and it's so fun to watch because it's a bit of science fiction, it's a bit
Hmm.
of like drama and love and like death and like
Yeah.
some Game of Thrones level violence,
Yeah.
but each one has is like a snapshot of a cool world that I want to like dive into and play. And so for my book, what I want to do is have these different, I guess, chapters like an
Hmm.
anthology where here's the cyberpunk chapter, here's the sci-fi chapter, the fantasy chapter,
Okay.
the fantasy chapter that's more like Zelda and owls and cute things like and so because I feel like as artists we have all these cool ideas that we're drawn to, and there's this for some reason idea that we can only pick one. It's like, wait, why? What if I want to do them all? And so I think I'm excited by like, oh yeah, I want to draw this stuff for a week and then draw that stuff for a week and then see where it goes and you know see if that results in good things like getting I guess it would be cool if I did that and then sold the stories to Netflix or something, as in the long
That
run.
would be cool. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Yeah, because I mean they're always looking for something new, so
Hmm.
it's just how different it
Right.
is or special, right? So
Hmm.
and so how are you going about these creations, Like do you do like sketches now for planning of the book or do you do mood boards or just writing the ideas down?
That's exactly it. Mood boards is usually what I start with. Like
Hmm.
I'll have like columns like for different ideas. Like this idea is that, and it looks like this. The characters could look like that, and I want to carry the story through here and there. So then there's like a sort of splash page of what it could feel like. And so when I do the art, I want it to also put my art there and make it feel like it's part of the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, but also it's like there's the research element. I haven't really done too much art. I have like maybe 30 or 40 pieces kind of going, but another aspect is, well, I do want to feel something. And what I mean is this, like whenever you listen to a really good song that speaks to you, It's got the rhythm, the feel of being taken to a different state of mind and emotion. That's really powerful to me. And it's like, can I somehow do that and be willing to be vulnerable with that and make it my art and then turn that into the story? So part of it is like visual, oh, that looks cool. Part of it is like sketching, that's really fun. And the other part is, but how do I make it feel a certain way and then drag other people to also feel that? And that's what music does. And it's like, how do I do that with my art?
Yeah, and now I actually imagine like this book also for kids, like the version where you would implement music, they would
Oh,
touch
yeah, yeah.
certain parts
Yeah.
and then some music would come. That would be cool. You should do that.
You should do that.
Well, I don't have your art style, right? So it would be
Oh,
super
sure. Yeah.
fitting. Yeah. But yeah, so that sounds very good, like this type of project. So something else you are working on the side, or mainly it's the book and the community building?
I think right now what's taking most of my time is still researching for the book, and then teaching, not just with the student that I have who's has 2 days left, but also on Discord. So I do like to keep up with what they're doing and helping out. Not everyone, because I obviously don't have enough time for 500 people. Um, but other projects, I think, no, just some freelance here and there.
Yeah. So that kind of keeps you running now for, like the rent bills and these kind of things, right? So you have
Right.
like the Patreon and the freelance projects. Or do you have something else now for like to keep you alive financially?
It's mostly Patreon, and I've taken a handful of breaks here and there, but since it's much cheaper to live here in this state, I can take more breaks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think Patreon, I know if I really wanted to, I can make that a bigger source of income, but it's like, it's making just enough so that it gives me time to do my own thing. And eventually I want my own thing to actually be the Patreon stuff. And so, and I think I did Patreon in the mindset of what do people want? And I think that's kind of a mistake, but also it works. So at the same time, was it really a mistake? I think the best result is if you're already doing the thing you love and then people want to be a part of it and see how you're doing it. That's the best way to go. And I want to figure that out.
Yeah. So maybe you can start sprinkling the ideas with the psychology and, sharing it, and then you get some feedback, right? And then see like if that's something people want to see also there on Patreon, or is it something more on YouTube or like private coaching, or where would that be in that 360? Or,
Right. It's all uncertain, but we're gonna figure it out. But like you said, you mentioned something earlier about writing down the things that you're grateful for, and I've heard about that as a method of, I guess, going about life, because we could be depressed and stuff, but if you just take the moment to appreciate at least one thing, and then more than one thing, it's like you get to feel chemically better, right? And so I realized that there's stages when you're going through a journey like this, where you're in a state where like, I got to figure something out for me. I need to survive. I need rent. I need money. And then once you get to a certain stage where you're stable there, then at least in the case of people like us, now it's community. Okay, well, I want to make life great for us, for this group. And then the next step would be, well, I want to make it great for everybody. And it goes from, there's actually a tier list where it's like, life is great for me. Life is great for people that are around me. And then it's just, wow, life is great.
Yeah.
And so that's all stemming from the idea of being grateful. But if you're below a certain threshold, it's hard to be grateful for things.
Yeah.
But I realize it is one of the most fulfilling emotions after all the money and stuff, because the money, once you have enough to just survive, I think as artists we don't really want to become billionaires. Like It'd be cool, I guess, but I'd rather have enough to have food and draw.
Exactly, yeah, because you
Yeah.
can always find ways how to, like do certain things. Like maybe some people travel a lot, but either you
Mm.
work with someone, they invite you for a workshop, or I also found out you can travel with pet sitting. And I like to do that because I like animals. So you can actually go somewhere in someone's
That's
house and
awesome.
stay there for free and, go for a walk
Yeah,
with the dog on the beach. So, I
that's so
mean,
cool.
why
I didn't
not?
know about that. What
So,
What are your favorite pets? Dogs, cats,
yeah, I
birds?
like all the animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm more like a dog person. But now I don't
Yeah.
have an animal at home because, it's
Oh,
like, that's the worst thing.
yeah.
But yeah,
I thought I was a cat person for a long time because my brother has cats. My sister had a cat, and I really liked cats, and I still do. Then I visited my friend in New York, and I got to know his dog. Her name was Fanny, and she is the cutest little thing, and she looks like a mix between a corgi or something, and another thing. And like she at first was like angry that I was a new person in the
yeah.
house, and she would
What is
bark and
that?
like yeah, and she would like hide in the corner and like bark at me, and but after an hour, like she like kind of slowly, get to know you, and then I started petting her, and then we became best friends, and then like to a point where she wouldn't go on a walk unless she made sure I was going with them, and like she would kind of like because she's a herder dog, and so I love that dog.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So I
it
think I'm a
sounds
dog
super nice.
person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like all the animals are super cute. We
Yeah.
were pet sitting two cats, and the cat was actually blind, but he
Oh,
was so active. He didn't mind at all. He was like
just
running
bumping into
around the
stuff.
house. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, like his sister, like the cat sister, was like healthy, but he had like the blindness, right? And he also have epilepsy. And I was like, yeah, gene combination great, but he was like super happy. And then when you see that at home, you're like, yeah, I mean, he's like super happy, so like I can be happy.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
So that was like an interesting experience.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah. So animals, that's good to have, and art creation, and I think like we discussed like a lot of topics, and maybe if you want to mention something else, like what
Mm,
is your like next step, what you are doing now before we finish.
yeah, I think we did cover pretty much all of that. Yeah, next steps is just. Oh, yeah, there is one thing. Are you going to Lightbox by any chance?
Nope. Yeah,
You're
this
familiar with
year.
what it is?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, are you going for the expo? Is
Yes,
it in
it's
October? No, no,
September.
September.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was like around that
Right.
time.
And so it's a convention established by Bobby Chu, who also runs Schoolism, and he's getting together a huge list of artists like Craig Mullins, Ian McCaig, and getting them all together for talks and panels and like a Comic Con. So there's like booths and areas for Artist Alley and whatnot. And so I was invited out to do a talk there. So I'll be going, but also Procreate is sponsoring a table for me. So I'll have a booth that's sponsored by Procreate, and I'll be there. I don't know if I want to sell art or something, but I do want to, you know, uh, figure that out. Whether it's giving pins away or sketching things for people, but we'll see. But yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be there.
Oh, cool, cool. So, are there any other festivals you are planning to go, or this year only this one?
Just that one for now. I think I need to dedicate the next few months specifically for my project. Next month or this month is going to be hard because it's Ramadan, and so I'm fasting during the day. And it's like I'm so useless during that, and I can't do much. But yeah,
Yeah, so that will be over soon, right? And then you can
yeah,
be more
yeah.
productive.
But at least I'm close to family, so
Yeah, but that's very good and important because before you were like super far, and even though it's the same country, right? But yeah,
right,
still
yeah,
very far.
yeah.
So yeah. I have just 1 hour flight, to visit
Oh,
other family members, so it's not that
not
far.
bad.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was a 6-hour flight sometimes from California to Ohio.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but so thank you so much again for being
Oh,
here
thank
and
you.
sharing the whole journey. So yeah, they're super informative, and I'm sure people like to see as well where you are now, especially when you mentioned that you don't upload many videos now on YouTube. So
Sorry.
yeah, but they can go check out everything to your Patreon and learn something, and looking forward to see your book hopefully soon, right? Yeah. So that would be super cool.
And right back at you. I appreciate all that you're doing again, and I'm glad to hear you have a Patreon now, and I hope that works out. And I'll definitely talk about that.
Thank
You're
you,
doing this for us, so
yeah. I want to I was thinking as well, as you said, like how can I help people? And I think aside of these interviews, that I had a lot of experience with like helping to get like clients, how to do the networking and these kind of things. So I was like, okay, maybe I can implement this there, like the business side for art, because that's like more my background, the business, rather than being like 20 years in concept art experience.
Sure, yeah.
So so let's see how that will all work out. So
The best of luck to you.
Thank you to you as well, and thanks everyone for watching or listening. So see you guys. Bye.